Hello there, this is a campaign as the Maratha Confederacy in Empire Total War with Darthmod, and this one's going to be a bit different to the usual Maratha campaign. Although we start off with something pretty normal, we just need to kill these Mughal Empire troops who are in our starting territory, just to get them out of the way and stop them doing any damage. But the main goal of this campaign will not be to fight the Mughal Empire or to fight in India very much at all actually. Anyway, as for the fight, let's just take a little look at the battle and remind ourselves of how combat works. Here I am shooting away at some enemy elephants. Elephants have a whole ton of hit points, I think, so you have to shoot them a lot of times to bring them down. They're surprisingly sturdy against gunfire, but they're even stronger in melee, so this is the way to do it. And by shooting these guys up, we're going to defeat their commander as well. And as you can probably tell, the rest of the enemy army are garrisoned in the distance, not paying any attention, and are generally just not playing the game. Classic Empire Total War. We can expect a lot more of that as we go along. We can also expect a lot more of this. Me, by not paying attention, allowed my calf to get charged by a random enemy unit off in the distance, but we just got out of that fight and then probably killed them elsewhere. The rest of this battle is pretty easy, because these Mughal Empire armies tend to have a lot of pure trash. Like, these archers just routed the second I got them into melee, so that's one unit out of the way. Then they had some even trashier units who were just standing at the back of the map. Just had to go over there and take them out, and that's going to be the end of this battle. So we've killed these guys, and the main goal there is just to stop them from raiding all of our territory so we can move on to the next turn. And here we have Great Britain with a not particularly friendly deal. They want to ally with me, but I have to swap my massive territory with millions of people in it for some island. Unfortunately, we're not going to take very kindly to this deal. Perhaps we could use that as some kind of casus belli. We'll have to see. So in the next turn, you can see I'm now gathering troops at the port near our capital, because as I said, we're not going to hang around India for too long in this campaign. We're getting out of here. Going into the next turn, Great Britain again makes a terrible offer. They really think we are fools and that we'll make these extremely unvaluable trades. Well, we'll have to teach them a lesson, won't we? So here we see me putting most of our troops into a couple of ships that I've recruited during the first couple of turns. And now we're going to go on a little adventure. This campaign is called the Reverse Raj campaign, and it has a very specific goal, that being to attack Great Britain. They're quite far away, just working out here what the best way to get to them is, because you can go either east or west from India, and there are 2 nodes worth of distance, so I thought maybe it's somehow faster to go the slow way in real life, but no, we'll go the fast way around Africa, and here we are 2 turns later after basically nothing happened, in Europe with our ships and our army. Now we need a couple of turns to sail up here to the British Isles, and the campaign will truly begin. So these 3 territories, Scotland, England and Ireland, are going to be our main targets for the beginning of this campaign, and we're going to occupy them and then see what happens. That's the plan. We're almost certainly going to end up at war with all of the Catholic powers around here, because we're a Hindu power, they will hate us. So that's going to be the campaign. It's not going to be fighting in India like the usual Maratha Confederacy stuff, although I was unable to get a peace treaty with the Mughal Empire, and you do start at war with them. So we need to defend India a bit in the meantime. Basically, we need to hold these territories for money until we secure some more territories. That way we don't go bankrupt. Also, technically, you have to hold at least 1 territory in India to not lose the campaign, because we're an Indian faction. Although there are some ways around that, which I'll talk about when the time comes. For now, we've got this fort defense against a not particularly strong Mughal force. This video is sponsored by me, and I say play Godless Tactics, the turn-based tactics and strategy game out now on Steam. You explore an exotic future scenario, pick your own path through an open world of strategic choices, and use a teamwork-focused tactical battle system to resolve your fights. It's good, and I know this because I made it myself. Link in the description. It's time then for an Empire Total War fort battle where anything can happen pretty much. The first challenge is getting your men to use the cannons on the wall to shoot stuff, and to just garrison themselves up against the edge of the wall to shoot. And you can see it's more difficult than you think it's going to be, because the units have their own ideas. They kind of reposition. There's no system to tell them to stand in a certain spot. They decide where to stand based on the situation. and that working out where to stand based on the situation doesn't always actually work out, as it were. In this case, some enemy trash bowmen ran out to the walls and routed, so that's good. Then they had some swordsmen running at the wall over here. They could climb up and attack us, so what I wanted was to have these guys shoot down at them. I tried turning them off and on fire at will to see if they would start firing, but that just did all sorts of other things instead, and the end result is that no, we're not going to be firing on them anytime soon. In fact, our men are just leaving entirely. That's not really what I meant. The only upside is that the swordsmen also glitched out and didn't climb the wall. They just stood there, sort of stuck in their walk cycle animation, turning off and on, so that was nice. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the fort, we do have some guys making it inside. I'm trying to get these swordsmen here to deal with them. Not quite working, but luckily enough they actually climbed back down their ropes once they climbed in, so that front didn't really open up as much as it could have done. A few guys are making it in, so there will be a battle at this part of the wall at least. Elsewhere, looks like I've got some troops in a nice favourable position, because here, the enemy's pure trash are climbing into this big blob of my swordsmen, and that's more like what we want to see. These guys are just going to be cut down in droves and we don't have to do anything. Luckily our men are not walking away this time. They're going to stay in for this fight, and obviously we'll kill this unit. It'll probably rout like halfway to death and then run away, come back and do it again, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, back on the other side of the fort, the fight the enemy ran away from is now starting again. And for the most part it's pure trash we're fighting, so we should be able to beat them. Plus, we are using a lot of garrison units which do come back from the dead, that old chestnut, so that's handy. The glitched swordsmen have died in some way and have been replaced by some glitched bowmen. They're trying to shoot up at me, but most of them, unfortunately, are facing the wrong direction. Some kind of protest going on here. I sent out some of my mob trash to attack them. The enemy also have some cannons, and if you want to know what they're doing, well, of course, they are doing this. The earth must be destroyed, for 'tis the will of the Dark Artillery Lord. He is back. So yeah, these cannons probably aren't going to pose much of a threat to our fort. On other maps where things are a bit flatter, maybe they will be a problem. Anyway, we do take out those bowmen outside by using my men to fire the fort cannons at last into the bowmen, and that routs them after my mob trash actually had difficulty taking them down. A little bit later, I run some stuff over to go and attack this position with the cannons. I think their elephants were here as well, but they weren't doing much. And at this stage, we've won the battle. I can just spam them with all of my necromanceable trash and grab this win. So we've held on to this bit of territory, all good stuff. The fact we took some losses does matter more in this game than it does in other Total Wars, because there's no automatic replenishment. So some of the losses we took there will be permanent unless we pay to undo them. Here's Mysore, our neighbour here, declaring war on me, so that's pretty annoying. Also lost a pointless alliance I had with Poland or something. But now to the meat of the matter. Our fleet arrives just off the coast of England, and now we need to decide what to do. Luckily, things are looking great. There's an English army that's nowhere near London, and London doesn't even have forts, so we can just storm right in and take it right now, especially because the port nearby is undefended, so we can land without it taking a turn. That is to say, we can attack London right now. It's got a pretty hefty garrison, but it's a garrison of low morale trash, so we're just going to try and steamroll them with all of our cav and melee units and get this thing going. Helping us out is the fact the enemy town is splitting their army in two. I say town, this is London by the way. It's a bit smaller than I expected. But yes, their armies on either side of the town in the open spaces. So that's perfect for my plan of running at them with cav really. What we can do is focus most of our stuff on one side. So I send a few units to set up on our right flank. But most of them are going to the left, including all of the infantry. The enemy infantry are setting up here using a cunning strategy. What looks like a single line of infantry folds out to reveal an entire regiment. Very cunning stuff from these dirty Brits, but we shall not be overcome by it, because we can just run at them. So that's the plan. The nice thing about running at them from multiple directions like this with different units is the AI tries to reposition itself ready to fire at the cav going behind them and things. And because of that, and because there's a long delay between moving and being able to fire in this game, basically we can run at them without being shot as long as we run at them from a few different directions. So we'll want to use that exploit throughout the entire campaign. And here we go, we managed to successfully engage the enemy infantry with our swordsmen, with none of our guys getting shot on the way. The Lancers do some good charging too. These Lancer units have really low stats but a really high charge bonus, So while they actually lose one-on-one to generic infantry units, they kill like 50 to 100 enemies when they enter combat, and that's usually enough to rout things like militia that can't sustain those losses. I think there might also be a morale shock for being engaged by cavalry in general. So basically, this left side of the battlefield, well, that's over already. We just rout tons of units and clear them all up. I also sent one sword unit into the middle of the town, and there they meet another enemy unit. This time it's their captain's unit, still just militia though. So we can fight and defeat them, and because we're in the town, we also avoid the risk of being shot at, because all of the line of sight breaking buildings mean you can probably get the enemy into melee nice and easy. Then we start our attack on the right flank as well. These firelock armed citizenry are kind of good for receiving cav charges because they have such big units, they can just eat up the charge bonus. But in this case, the pressure of the camels and elephants pushes them away. The elephants definitely give morale shocks to anything near them, so that's handy. Elsewhere, stuff's wheeled around the back of the town, ready to take out the last few units. Looks like we came very close to that unit being standing still enough to be able to fire. But they didn't fire, they just ate that charge in the face. Good stuff. Soon there was just one unit left somewhere in the middle of the town, and they came in to attack it with all sorts of things, but this was bad actually. One thing I learned the last time I played Empire, and I sort of forgot, is that charging damages your own units as well. So if you charge cav into a mass melee, it kills your men as well as the enemies. So it's a unique feature, I think possibly of just Darthmod rather than just the game, I'm not quite sure. But we need to be more careful. Anyway, we took the enemy down, we killed 10 times more stuff than we lost, and it was a good battle. London has fallen. Public order is going to be a big issue now, because it's the capital of a faction. We get -30 public order. That means we are pretty much certain to face multiple rebellions here. We're going to have to try and use our army to suppress the people and just basically kill them if they try to rise up, which of course would add to my reverse Raj theme for this campaign, so that's all good. The thing is, we're also going to want to move out and deal with other stuff in the British Isles. One thing I can do is take out this chapter school. This will start converting the area to Hinduism, and that will improve my public order, but only by a small amount. I think you get -4 public order for being a different religion, not that much compared to the -30 from resistance to invaders, but we're still doing it. I also brought over a guy, I can't remember what they're called, the guy that converts your people to your religion for Hinduism, so that will help out in the long run. There's another thing we need to do this turn actually, that is to move out and attack the English army we saw over here. We have a big advantage, so in this case I decided to auto-resolve. I couldn't remember if in this game auto-resolve was insane or not. The result seems okay at least. I think it's the case in this game that auto-resolve only kind of breaks and gives you weird results if the enemy force is small. So like if you attack 50 enemies, you will lose 500 troops to auto-resolve them, but big battles come out more evenly. Anyway, I had to kill them this turn, because if I didn't, they would have gone around and just scorched earth everything. So by killing them and pushing them off into the corner, we at least protect all of the things outside of London. The British army goes back inside the port during their turn, so we auto-resolve them with all of this stuff. This time I had a big advantage and we get something closer to the not very good auto-resolve I was worried about getting earlier, where a battle that would have done like no damage to our army at all, manually resolved, kills a few hundred on our side. Not very nice. Anyway, now I can build this ashram to help speed up the spread of Hinduism, to slightly increase the speed at which we secure this territory. But I do also want to move out, because Edinburgh is not defended very heavily. So I thought what I'd do is split the army. Most of the cav stays behind, ready to be a rapid force to charge out and attack rebels, whereas most of the infantry goes up to attack the fortified position they have at Edinburgh. We will need to do a siege assault there. During the end turn, France declares war on us, that's handy, so now we have a nice big enemy right next to us. We'll probably have to deal with that soon enough. We also get some action back down in India, and we are going to want to actually win this battle, because until we've secured a bit more of the British territory, we don't have enough money to upkeep our army in Britain. Looks like we've got a chance though. We've got plenty of stuff defending the capital. I have spammed out a few units here. The issue we have though is that the Dark Artillery Lord is not with the enemy today. their cannons deploy just on flat ground in front of the fort, so they can blast open breaches in the wall. And here we are a bit later, after such a breach is opened, they come through and attack my musketeers here. I had this idea where I'd have the swords a bit closer to the breach, so the enemy would kind of get aggroed onto them, and then I could shoot into their flank using those musketeers. It didn't work because they just walked past the swords and just attacked the musketeers. Luckily they're attacking with a gun cav unit, so not the best melee vanguard. We should be able to hold them off. Meanwhile, in this corner of the fort, we've got a more standard fight. The enemy are sending a bunch of musketeers over the wall to fight with our swords. Looks like they've got some melee trash in there as well, forming a traditional homunculus, all looking good. We'll do our best. Nearby, we've got a gun battle. They've got a squad of like 40 elephants shooting at our musketeers on the wall here. I figured this would be fine because we're in cover and we have way more guns than they do. But as mentioned earlier, elephants are kind of resistant to gunfire, or maybe our guns just suck. That fight's actually not going to go very well, as it turns out. Now back to the breach, you can see what this battle is forming. Basically, this is going to be a long grind because they're pouring more and more stuff in here, and I'm pouring more and more stuff onto my side. So the two sides are just going to kill each other in a massive massacre, really, and we'll see who comes out on top in the end. Over here we've got a battle between some of my gunners and some horse archers, and if you saw a video I released recently complaining about horse archery in this game, here's an example of what I mentioned in that old video when I said the AI can do it really well. When the AI shoots volleys of arrows at you, they just go straight towards the target. Luckily they don't have line of sight, so they just shoot the wall in this case. Which is not the case if the player tries to do that, but we don't need to worry about that now. Here's another look at that little gun battle with the elephants, where we've lost loads of men and the elephants are still going strong. Not quite sure what's going on there. Meanwhile, back at the breach, the slaughter continues. They're coming through with the dervishes, a not particularly good melee unit, and a bunch of cabs stuck in there. They had some camels too. The camels weren't much of a worry because they routed super easily. I even got the thing I was trying to do going a bit there, where the muskets can shoot into the flank of the enemy's blob. Up on the walls, well, the homunculus battle is still just going, and this is an absolute mess, really. They've started attacking with actual sword units as well, so I think both sides are going to be losing men en masse. Basically, guys will pop in and out of the homunculuses. Sometimes they'll die, and everyone's just dying on both sides in a huge massacre. And in the end, we might win. I think we do get some kind of morale bonus for being in the fort, so our guys will fight a bit longer. Maybe that might be in later games. I don't remember if that was in Empire actually. The replay crashed at about that point, so here is the actual battle footage. Here you can see I'm struggling to throw more trash into the death melee, but things have gone well at the breach. We've seen a chain rout, including my own troops as well, so everybody died, everyone's getting out of there. But a lot of the enemies are actually going to come back there. Their units have enough strength to unrout. So there'll be another battle at the breach, and here it is. And once again, we just want to throw everything in there and hope that we win. That's about the extent of the strategy. Same thing for the homunculus battle over here. Looks like some of our units are starting to go. But again, we do have some garrison units in here which are very sacrificable, so while our losses will be great, some of them don't count. There was this other battle at the back of the fort. I had a unit of musketeers trying to hold off these bowmen using a homunculus of their own right there. I had seen previously that Hindu musketeers can easily beat dervishes, a melee unit, with a 2-to-1 kill-death ratio. But that doesn't happen in this battle. We really struggle to take out those bowmen who have no melee stats. So this confirms a theory I ranted about at some point. I think that was in the old video I just mentioned as well, where I think melee troops used by the player are artificially weakened in the code in some way, so they're not as good as when the AI uses them, in the same way that archers don't work when the player uses them, but they do if the AI does. This may just be a conspiracy, it's just my gut feeling, but it seems that melee units, when the player uses them, are mainly useful for their effect as morale shockers. They don't actually do that well in melees compared to their stats, that is. But who knows how this stuff really works. Basically, the fight goes on, and we do eventually snipe the enemy general off his elephant, so that's going to help out with the general brawl, since they'll all lose a morale point or whatever it is you lose for the general dying. Eventually we'll break through that breach and push them all away. The fight with the elephants actually continued because they routed after the general went down, but then came back. We ended up losing something like 50 guys to take out 20 elephants despite shooting from the wall and with vastly more guns. So that's why I say I think this went badly. I really expected us to just slaughter them in that situation, but surprisingly those elephants are hard to hit. Or of course, maybe our gunners actually just suck. That's always an alternative explanation. So we've now won out at the breach. There's just one wavering unit in there, but you can see there are some units standing further back. They had several units that kind of went into like an AI disabled mode where they just stood there and ignored the battle, and those elephants became one of those units. They came up to the wall and then just stood in that spot. I was just about able to shoot at them with a few of the gunners. Again, not really doing anything, but the elephants aren't doing anything either, so I guess neither side's achieving anything here. They could come and run through the breach, of course. That would be more trouble for us. What I did then is eventually come out of the breach. Looks like those elephants routed away after a while, and now I'm going to have a massive trash mash. I'm going to send out all of my sacrificable units that will just respawn after this to hunt down all of the AI disabled units still outside the fort. We can surround and pound. Our stats are like 0, so we can't really defeat them very well, but we can rout them by just attacking from all sides, including use here of an actual unit by the looks of things. Unfortunately, before we get bayonets, I'm guessing these ranged units aren't very good in melee. Still, they charge in, get the morale shocks, and the presence of these elephants should give the enemy a morale shock as well. Those two units are going to rout while surrounded and totally die. They also have some cannons nearby, which I've got some trash running at. You might be wondering why the enemy's cannons didn't blow up more of the fort after opening that breach. And that's because they also went into the disabled mode. They just sat there doing nothing until I came out of the fort. Then they started shooting at my guys outside. But really nicely, they didn't blow up more parts of the wall, especially the parts that my troops were standing on, so that was good of them. By the end of the battle, we have lost about half of our troops, but many of them will come back, and we've done the business. We've kept another turn of income going in, so we've got some more time to continue fighting in the British Isles, and that means we need to press on and get on with this attack. It's time to storm the forts outside of Edinburgh, and that is how we shall start the next episode of this series. So I hope you enjoyed this opener, and I hope you'll join me for more, and a chance to see the Hindu conquest of Great Britain and perhaps more of Europe as well, which you don't see that often in Total War games, let's be honest. I'll join you for it in part 2.